let's return to football, but go the college route. Of course, another great season is upon us pretty soon, will be upon us pretty soon. So a lot to talk about there. But interesting, as you know, the conferences are doing their media days, and we talked about Nick Saban and what he said yesterday, and Tom Herman from Texas. And there was an interesting article on Cleveland.com where they polled the writers around the conference. And they asked him, obviously Urban Meyer was the best coach in the league. And they polled, now that he stepped down, they polled the writers and asked them, which coach, if you were the AD, which coach would you want to hire for your school? A shocker to me. Now, I know he's done a lot with a little, but Pat Fitzgerald of Northwestern, Kelvin, got the most votes. And he of course, you know, he's done some good things with Northwestern. You know, they've been ranked in the top 25 at the end of the season 4 times, which is big for them. You know, but he's been there 14 years, 4 times in the top 25. It is what it is. He obviously may have some academic standards that some of the other schools may not have. The thing that really shocked me as well was that Jim Harbaugh was tied for 4th. So you had Pat Fitzgerald with 14 votes, Scott Frost with 9 of Nebraska, Jeff Brom of Purdue got 4, and James Franklin and Jim Harbaugh tied for 4th with 2 votes apiece. Ryan Day of Ohio State, for new coach, replacing Urban Meyer, and Mark D'Antonio of Michigan State got 1 vote apiece. You are obviously a Michigan man, not the University of Michigan, but you're from the state of Michigan, Detroit.
Right, but I'm born and raised in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I went to high school about 50 yards from the big house.
Okay, so you're perfect to talk about this. My daughter is a rising senior at Michigan. Now, I know Harbaugh, and I was extremely disappointed last year with what looked like it could really hold some promise the way they finished off that season. Right. But I do think he gets a bit of some people think he's overrated. I actually think people may be a little too hard on him. And I think this vote of writers around the conference just kind of backs up my take. What do you think about Harbaugh? What do you make?
So I don't think people are hard on him. I think because he set the bar, he set the standard. He came in hot. He came in, and the team was very successful that first year. He coming in off of the success that he had when he was at Stanford. He's coming in after the success he had with the 49ers. I mean, they were a play away from possibly winning the Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick. He took a guy like Colin Kaepernick, who was regarded as good, but we didn't know he could have the potential that he did under Harbaugh. And so you come in with all of this. You had Andrew Luck, you know, clearly he's talented, but he was under your tutelage. He's looking like the best quarterback in college football. So he comes in with all of this hype, and then here's why I say I don't think it's been, you know, the people who have been saying bad things about him is unwarranted. Now, the most important thing at the University of Michigan, every single coach of the last 30 years that comes in and says, most importantly, we're going to beat that team down south. Everybody goes crazy because the most important thing is to beat Ohio. They don't even say Ohio State. They just say Ohio. That's how they do it at Michigan. Well, he has had no success. He's the first Michigan head coach to go 0-4 against Ohio State. He's 1-9 against top 10 teams. So when you come in with all the hype and the fanfare, and you're sitting in trees waiting on recruits, and you're taking your kids to Paris, you're doing rap songs, and you're walking around making a thing about your khaki pants and all that. Well, at some point, we talk about this all the time. It's cute. Baker Mayfield, the dances and the dabs and all that, you better win. It's cute, Jim Harbaugh, hanging out in trees, doing this, saying that, rap song this, and hanging out with Snoop or whoever, you know, what other famous person. Are you winning? Because the same thing would happen where I'm sitting right now in L.A. if this would have been Pete Carroll hanging out with Will Ferrell and Snoop Dogg and had his team been losing. People wouldn't want to see that. So winning cures all, and he hasn't won.
Has he not put them back on the national map?
Okay, then if
the 2 years before he got there, they were unranked in the top 25. The third year before he got there, they were number 24.
And the first year, Chris, people said those were Brady Hoke's players. And Brady Hoke had a great year that year, and then he
really? And he was 5-7 his last year.
But the team,
Brady Hoke's last 3 years, 8-5, 7-6, 5-7.
What was he his first year?
Even if they were his players, Harbaugh made much more out of him than Brady Hoke did.
But the expectation isn't for him to be a solid to good coach. The expectation with him for him to win Big Ten titles.
Number 10 in the country isn't solid to good. Number 12 in the country isn't solid to good. That's darn good.
Oh,
I mean, let's not act like
no.
Michigan. Michigan is not Alabama. Michigan has one title in like the last 50 years,
but
60 years.
And I agree that Michigan got held to a standard.
Bo Schembechler, who is fantastic, right? He's hallowed in the state of Michigan. Never won a national championship.
Michigan, I agree, has been held. I would even maybe argue Notre Dame. Those two schools have been kind of the two schools that have had plenty of success.
Well, certainly recently, Notre Dame
exactly. They've had a lot of success throughout the history of college football. But I will agree, Michigan is not an Alabama. You could say it's not an Oklahoma.
You could of late, it hadn't even been Ohio State.
Ohio State clearly hasn't been Ohio State. Hasn't been USC over the last 20. USC struggling, now. But I'm saying USC had a run of maybe 7-8 years where you're like, if they're not good, they're great, one or the other. So the issue really with him is, okay, you're beating up on some of these lesser teams. You're beating up on some of these teams who aren't that great. But when we need you to win against these top 10 teams, these top flight teams, or Ohio State, you don't show up. And it's not just that he's losing, it's how he's losing. He's getting beat down, or his offense isn't scoring. He has no productivity from the quarterback position at all. And you came in and you're supposed to be the quarterback whisperer, and that has not been the case. There's been no quarterback that's coming out of Michigan where you're like, ooh, okay, he looks like he might be something in the pros. And so people are saying, man, that was one of the things we thought, if nothing else, he's going to come in here and dominate and get great quarterback play, and he hasn't done it. And trust me, as a Michigan fan, every year you go, no, this is the quarterback guy. Oh, no, that wasn't the guy. Oh, no, that was Brady Hoke's guy. This is Harbaugh's guy, and it hasn't been the case. So I get you, he's had success, but people want sustained greatness from him, and he hasn't produced.
I give you that. Like, look, he hasn't won a national championship game. Like you said, he hasn't been able to beat the better teams in the conference. But like I said, you can't underestimate him putting Michigan back on the map. Michigan is back in the national conversation. It has been ever since Harbaugh has been there.
Can I say it's been an embarrassment, though, Chris? Can I say you put me back on the map just to get blown out in big games?
At least you're there. We mentioned Pat Fitzgerald for Northwestern. Are they relevant? I mean,
well, it's early. They got to give him another year.
He's making much out of nothing, but we're giving him props for, making him the 8th seed, the 7th seed without much talent.
But this is Michigan, and if you're going based off the standards you said,
Michigan has not won a national title. Won in 1997. That was won in the last 60 years or so. So I'm just saying, by Michigan standard, he's been a little low.
Hold on, but let's scale that back. They at least have won Big Ten titles. They at least had been won there now that they have the divisions in titles, and they didn't have that. That was just Big Ten for years. But they at least had won those, and he had not won a Big Ten title. He hasn't even won his own.
He hadn't won his division.
Exactly.
He's been 10-3 in 3 of his 4 years there. I mean, look. I guess what I'm saying is, a lot of people talk like he should be fired.
No. He shouldn't be fired. And that's what
I'm saying. Yeah, I'm saying I agree he has not quite lived up to the hype. And again, last year, incredibly disappointing. But again, he has put this team on the radar again. Like I said, under Rich Rodriguez, and obviously they were horrible pretty much under Rodriguez for 3 years. But Brady Hoke, they weren't in the top 25 2 of his 4 years, his last 2 years.
But
Harbaugh has them consistently ranked in the top 15.
Right.
That's worth something.
But what you're saying is, I want to just roll with being content. I want to be 10-3, and so I think
he's capable of bringing them further than that.
It's possible, but here's the thing: you're being rational. First of all, we know the fans are irrational. We know that oftentimes organizations, or in this case, schools, have been irrational. How many times have we seen in sports where you're the coach of the year and you're fired? How many things? So meaning, if we're going by those standards that oftentimes aren't necessarily in college, because college you can be the king of the state literally, but
right.
If we're going by the standards of people have had success and they've been good, but Dwayne Casey, you got to go. And we've seen it in other sports, college football as well. Hey, you were good. You got to go. What's my man that was at with Johnny Manziel's coach? Forget his name, slips me right now. Yeah, Kevin Sumlin. You had success there. At a school that normally doesn't have that much success, you got to go. You had a bad year or two. It's time to go. We see that all the time.
But some of it is your track record, too. And, again, you mentioned Stanford. You mentioned San Francisco. You know he's a good coach. And I get it. We're not going to let this go on forever if you're University of Michigan. You do have to get to that next level where you can make the playoff, the college football playoff, win the Big Ten, beat Ohio State, obviously. But I'm just saying, I think people are a little too hard on it. When I see him tied for 4th among Big Ten coaches, I mean, do you agree with that?
I think one thing they may be doing is saying, based off everything, like this coming up season, maybe Michigan didn't have a recruiting class that they would have thought. Maybe they lost some guys that were good. They lost a bunch of great defenders to the NFL this past draft. So I think it may be playing on what they project versus just individualized coach for coach. You follow what I mean? Like saying going into the season, I don't know, Michigan lost some great defender.
Well, they are, look, the same poll, the Cleveland Plain Dealer poll, Cleveland.com, did predict that Michigan would win the Big Ten. So they are at least from this poll.
So they must just be looking at
to win.
So
this would be the year.
But let me ask you this. This is my final thought, because I think we're all overall on the same page that he's a good quality. He's a heck of a coach. In any stop that he's ever been, he's been successful, and he's clearly successful at Michigan. But I think the pomp and circumstance, the circus, and all the antics is what has created an environment where people grow tired, right, man? All this for that. All this, you doing all this for that. You saying all this for that. You're doing rap videos. You're hanging out in trees. You're creating all this stuff. And by the way, he threw a little jab at Urban Meyer. And this to me was one of those cover his butt. Like he said basically, Urban Meyer has won. He had a lot of success. He won big games, but he also brought a lot of controversy. I think that's his way of kind of covering his butt. Say, see, I might not have won the big games, but I'm controversial. There's no controversy around me. Controversy free.
I agree with that.
He threw a little jab there. I didn't like that. But this is my last question for you. Do you believe the antics have gotten to the point where people are just kind of over it? We see it all the time, right? Nick Young is cute when he's doing all the funny stuff and the team's winning. It's up. Then it's like, all right, Nick Young.
Let's not compare him to Nick Young.
I went a little far. I jumped off the deep end. I'll admit that. But
I think beyond the antics, I think it's just been losing the big games. Like you said, 1-9 against top 10 teams. 0-4, most importantly, against Ohio State.
And
as
that's
you know,
huge
that
in
is
Ann
a
Arbor.
no-no. Right. And then only 2-2 against Michigan State. 1-3 in bowl games. I think that has hurt him a lot more than the antics. So, look, I think we are kind of on the same page in that he does have to take it up a notch.
He does.
But I do think there's something to be said for putting them back on the national map. They are one of those, 8 teams that really one of the 8 most popular, most relevant teams in college football.
And I think that's just simply why people want him to go to the next level. Because it's like you brought him back. Let's go ahead and get over that hump now. And lastly, I'll say this. He's 0-4 against Ohio State. But, dude, over the last 15 years, 12 years, off top of my head, they're probably, 3-9, maybe. So I think there's all it's added.
Ohio State has won the last 7.
So exactly. So even though he's 0-4, I think he's also carrying the burden that other coaches couldn't get it done.
Oh, yeah.
And they were saying you were supposed to be the hope to get it done.
What do you think about Jim Harbaugh? Overrated, underrated, or what?
All right, let's get to Marty in Kentucky. Marty, what's going on, brother?
What's up, fellas? How y'all doing?
Doing well.
What's happening, Marty?
Man, I got to go with, after hearing 4th in the Big Ten, I have to say grossly overrated. There's not 4 guys in the Big Ten that could get the Michigan job. We're also
so you're saying underrated. You're saying underrated.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Okay. Yes, I misquoted. Underrated. And we're talking about a guy that, if you go back and watch that Super Bowl, the very end of the game on that 4th down, that should have resulted in a pass interference in a 1st and goal. Was that close to winning the Super Bowl, and went to a franchise that hadn't won in ages and made them that close to Super Bowl. And he got the Michigan job, and I just 4th in the Big Ten, not the SEC, not the ACC, 4th in the Big Ten. that's hard for me to fathom.
Hey, Marty, real quick, let me throw this at you, though. But the fact of the matter is when it comes to big games, he's 1-9. And part of that is it. Guys might look at him and say, yeah, you can beat all these other teams, but when it comes to beating the teams that matter in your own conference, you can't. So does that matter at all?
It matters, Kelvin. That's a good point. I just can't see that pushes him back to fourth in the Big Ten.
I respect that.
Yeah, I'm with both of you. Like, I agree. Like, fourth? Come on.
Well,
you can argue fifth. They had him tied for fourth. That's ridiculous.
All right, let's go to Jake in Vegas. You're on with the Odd Couple. Of course, Chris Broussard. I'm in Kelvin Washington for Rob Parker. What's going on, Jake?
How you doing?
What's happening?
I'm going to go with overrated, and here's why. When you coach at a school like Michigan, Ohio State, Auburn, Alabama, Duke, or North Carolina in basketball, you better be competitive with your rivals because that's what the fan base cares about almost as much as national titles. John Cooper at Ohio State put more NFL talent than anybody in the history of football, couldn't beat Michigan and got fired. I mean, when you go out and play your rival, if you can't be competitive, the fan base hears it all year long, every year from the other fan base. They get sick of it, and it bubbles up. And as far as fourth in the Big Ten, I mean, James Franklin, Urban Meyer, the guy at Wisconsin's all right, I guess. The Big Ten's not that strong in my opinion.
And remember, Meyer's gone now. Meyer's gone,
yeah.
so.
And great call, Jake. Thank you for the call. Jake he reminds me of something too. And I'm going to use the same guy, or at least similar last name. So Mike D'Antoni, and then there's D'Antonio. D'Antonio, I always mix him up. But D'Antonio at Michigan State, he came in, and Michigan State had started to flounder, and they weren't really doing anything. All of a sudden, he starts winning. He starts beating Michigan regularly. So again, to Jake's point, as somebody who's born and raised in Ann Arbor, Michigan, we cannot have Michigan State beating you. You can't turn around and have at all Ohio State beating you because those are the two games that matter most. And as Jake said, look, you can't always get to a national championship. That's very unrealistic, to always think you can do that. But the least you can do is take care of business, right? Take care of home, and that is to win against your rivals and then let the chips fall where they may when it comes to the postseason. And they have not done that. And let me ask you this, CB, what's the difference between Mike D'Antoni and that he's had a lot of success, won a bunch of games, had nice success with the Suns, nice success with the Rockets. He ain't winning the big ones, and he ain't winning the games that mattered. Can't you kind of argue he's a Harbaugh-like coach?
Well, I look, I've said it. I think I said it yesterday. I'm in the minority. I think D'Antoni's a Hall of Fame coach.
Oh, hold on. Robert, write that down. Robert G, write that down.
Nelson's in the Hall of Fame. He didn't win any championships.
He just won for longevity and creativity, and I guess
okay.
And D'Antoni has that creativity. He's
helped change the game of basketball, or at least changed it back to a fast-paced, up-tempo game. Was one of the first to utilize the three-point shot the way he is. So yeah, I just think for his innovation and his success, that he deserves to be the Hall of Fame. Okay. But I agree.
But I was saying he
hasn't been able to get it done.
Right. Let's keep it rolling. Daniel in California, you're on the Odd Couple. Kelvin Washington in for Rob Parker. What's going on?
Hey, guys, what's going on? I'm going to go with overrated, and I'm a 49ers fan. And here's why. 2 callers ago, they said he took the Niners from losing to winning. He did, but he inherited a golden team. Singletary just was not a good coach. I mean, Harbaugh had Aldon Smith, Navarro Bowman, Patrick Willis, and Ahmad Brooks. That's probably one of the best linebacking corps we can think of in the last 10 years. Let's not mention Justin Smith up front. 2011 NFC title game, we lose to the Giants. The next year, I mean, look at the Super Bowl. We get a illegal shift call on the first play of the game. That's coaching, guys. We go down to the Ravens. They finally get back in the game, and we throw the ball 3 times in a row to Michael Crabtree with Frank Gore on the sideline. Let's go. How
have they been since Harbaugh left?
That team got blown up, though. Let's look at the roster. I mean, Willis retired. Vernon.
They
Davis
they went 8 straight years without making the playoffs before Harbaugh gets there. His first year, they go from 6-10 to 13-3. Second year, they make the Super Bowl. And then he leaves 2 years later, and they haven't been to the playoffs since.
No, Chris, you're right, but Harbaugh is a great week 1 through 17 coach. but there's something about him that he can't win the big game.
I mean, you know what? Listen, Daniel, we
That's
appreciate
fair
the call.
to say right now.
I was going to say that looms over his head. Can you win the big one? And he might even be able to get you there. At least he was previously be able to get you there. You know what you mentioned, the 49ers. But I'm also not going to say he's not a great coach because of like one call. They got a illegal shift in the beginning of the game. That doesn't mean you're a bad coach for sure. But I just think it's enough. We've seen that you've been able to go 12-4, 13-3.
Right, now it's time.
Now,
Yep,
otherwise it becomes hypocritical because they fired Lloyd Carr after all those years. He at least got you
had good success.
right, and got you a title, a national title. And he had similar seasons where they would go 9-4, 10-3.
Right.
And so it becomes hypocritical if you don't move on.